All right, we are live. Hi, and welcome to Loose Wires, where we talk about the current events from an anarcho-communist perspective. I'm Corey, and as usual, I'm joined by Ancom Psycom. Thanks for joining me. And I guess before we get too far into it, if you like what we're doing, hit the like button and maybe share it around. Maybe if you share it while it's still live, we can get more comments, more people interacting. That'd be cool.
Hey, you never know, maybe.
Maybe. I guess, yeah. With that, we might as well just jump into it. So we've got eyewitness testimonies from Gaza, from healthcare and aid workers. At a recent press conference hosted by NDP MP Heather McPherson at the National Press Gallery, healthcare and aid workers shared harrowing firsthand accounts from Gaza. They described treating severe injuries, witnessing attacks on hospitals, and observing the dire humanitarian situation, including widespread starvation and the targeting of medical facilities. One doctor emphasized the vulnerability of healthcare workers, noting that over 14,000 have been killed in the past year and a half. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad someone is saying something about this. I'm unsurprised that it's the NDP doing it, because God knows the liberals and certainly the conservatives don't give a fuck.
Right.
But you know, at the very least, someone in federal government is actually speaking up. You know, we have people doing that on our side of the border as well, but they are being demonized to all hell. I'm guessing MP McPherson probably is as well, by, you know, no small amount of the opposition, but at the very least, something's being said. So.
It's kind of a strange situation because the NDP has like 7 members in parliament right now, which is not very much and not enough to really make much of an impact unless the Liberal Party kind of gets behind them on something. But yeah, it's great that somebody who actually has a name and has media attention is saying something. And I think it is bringing some attention to it that, like, Mark Carney can't deny, because Canada is starting to take a little bit more hardline stance, which is not being reacted to very well by Israel, but we're still doing it.
Yeah.
I listened to some of these stories that the healthcare workers were saying, and it's exactly what you expect, right? It's quite it's pretty hard to listen to. It's pretty brutal stuff. People are, they're impacted pretty traumatically by what they've seen and what they've experienced over there.
Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise that people going into, you know, what is effectively not even effectively, just literally is a war zone, you know, are seeing such absolute, you know, horrors, and then to see that it's primarily, you know, being perpetrated by a government against a largely, you know, not governmentless, but like there's basically no real, you know, governing authority in Gaza these days other than Israel. So like it's, you know, it's a very one-sided invasion of that region. And, you know, it's unsurprising to see that much devastation. And it's incredible that these people voluntarily go over there to try and, you know, relieve that suffering somewhat. You know, and then they come back and, you know, share the sorts of horrors that they've seen and hope that someone in a position of power will try to do something to help, you know, at least curtail that suffering somewhat. Granted, you know, I'm not entirely sure what all Canada can do. You know, it's mostly the U.S. that is funding and perpetuating the horrors over there. But you know, anything they might be able to do.
Yeah, we do have some weapon supplies or like guidance systems or some shit that's produced in Canada that we're supposedly limiting the sale of to Israel, but I'm not entirely sure how much we can believe in that. There was also, so when I learned about this, I was also watching Rachel Gilmore. She's a Canadian journalist who does mostly independent journalism and a lot of fact checking. And she also posted like this video of the Palestinian representative in the UN session, where he was talking about the death of the children of Palestine, and he like broke down in tears over it. And then of course the Israel representative gets up and says like there will be peace when you love your children more than you hate us, which is an old line that you've heard many times from vile, disgusting sociopaths.
That's kind of messed up, especially when it's it's the ones who are primarily committing the violence saying that.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I mean that is effectively just saying there will be peace when you capitulate, because that's all it is. When you're saying when you love your children more than you hate us, that's basically saying when you kowtow to us, and all of the oppression that we are doing to you, then we will stop doing it. I'm like, it's possible to hate an enemy specifically because you love your children. That's a
right.
thing that can also be true. And when you see horrific acts of terror and violence being committed against your people, and particularly your children, then I think that's a really fucking, it's a victim blamey, like, that's abuser talk, basically.
Exactly.
I'll stop hitting you when I'll stop hitting your children when you love them more than you hate me, or some shit like that. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. It is like so fucking gaslighty and victim blamey. I can't even come up with like good language for it. But
it's really tough.
Yeah, psychological and emotional abuse on a fucking national level.
Yeah,
wild.
It is.
I say wild, but like we're seeing that in our, in the U.S., that sort of, psychological and emotional abuse happening on a fucking daily basis here. But still, to see it happen at the UN is, a little unexpected at the very least.
It's another level, right? Yeah, it sort of seems like, it's
this is the this is the abusive spouse doing the abusive behavior directly in front of the rest of the family, and they do nothing.
Yeah,
that is the level of absolutely fucking insane this is to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I don't have it in the notes, but I also was listening to an episode of It's Going Down, and it was, I guess, one of their sub shows, which is called The Beautiful Idea, or A Beautiful Idea. And they were talking about anarchist volunteers going over and volunteering in Palestine. And I'll try and find notes, or try and find the link for it so that people can listen to it. It's quite a really, I think, a really important podcast episode worth listening to.
Fair.
Okay, so story number 2. Rodney Hinton Jr. accused of killing deputy after his son's death. So Rodney Hinton Jr. is facing aggravated murder charges after allegedly striking and killing a sheriff's deputy with his car one day after his son, Ryan Hinton, was shot and killed by Cincinnati police. Rodney Hinton had viewed the body cam footage of his son's killing earlier that day and was reportedly in a state of extreme distress, and he has pleaded not guilty, and his defense argues that the act was driven by overwhelming grief, which I'm on board with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how well that particular defense is going to hold up. Let's be real here. Right. I don't really know the legal ins and outs of something like that. Like, is it similar to a, temporary insanity plea or something like that? Right. I'm not sure. This is a weird one, because I'm like, chances are the sheriff that he killed probably had absolutely nothing to do with his son's murder. Let's see here. I'm actually looking.
He was actually retired.
Hamilton County Sheriff's Office, and I'm just looking at the original.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So it was a Cincinnati officer, and this guy was part of the sheriff's office. So yeah, not even in the same department. I mean, look, I'm as ACAB as most people can reasonably get. There are people who can take it a little farther and be unreasonable about it.
Yep.
But at the same time, like, I don't know, a guy directing traffic probably didn't deserve this, at least not in the moment. I have no idea what the fuck he might have done in his
Right.
career because, let's face it, there's a lot of shit that happens in cop careers that never sees the light of day
Yep.
because other cops cover it up. So I can't say this guy was innocent in any way. But like, yeah, I would love to know, I don't even find the overwhelming grief defense particularly convincing myself.
No.
Not to say that, like, I don't know. It was a day. This one's a really hard one for me to
Yeah. And
to clock here, just because like there's too much shit I don't know. Like I'm only hearing about the highlights of this, and I'm just like, there is so much more detail I want to be able to understand about this whole situation that I don't have right now. But like, if you're gonna do vehicular manslaughter against a cop, at least try to make sure it was a cop who had some relation to the thing that you're doing. Or, if you're just going after police in general, that's a whole other thing. But like, if you're gonna try and connect the two, make it a little more relevant, I guess. This is just for strategy's sake,
And it's possible, and I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. It's possible that it was the overwhelming grief that made him target someone totally unrelated because he couldn't think clearly.
Yeah, very likely. That's a totally fair point. That I don't know. It's just there's too much unknown right now, and I'm sure in a couple of years when this trial actually goes to court, assuming that it does, then it doesn't end in a plea deal at some point between now and then. Hopefully, we'll get some more details out of it, but I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I know. Like, you can only say so much about being ACAB on a podcast on YouTube.
Yeah.
So my viewpoint is going to be a little bit censored here, but I don't see Rodney Hinton as a villain, is what I guess I'm trying to say here. I see him as a grieving father who may have reacted in a way that most people would not react. And yeah, that's about all I can say, I think.
Yeah, like he's a victim in a lot of grief, and whether or not that grief drove him into some sort of, vengeful or retributive mindset is, it's a possibility at the very least. Yeah, that's. And the worst part is, like, I'm guessing the people who actually killed his son probably aren't having much done. I would love to be proved wrong on that. I have been a few times in the past, but more often than not, it turns out, administrative leave for a few months and then basically nothing happens. And, maybe they get fired from their department and go on to work in another one. Who knows at this point?
Yeah, usually that's the case. They don't, if they face any consequences, then they just move on to another department. It's not something that I suspect we're going to see much gain on in terms of like justice for Ryan Hinton.
Yeah,
but I guess on to story number 3. Trump admin deports a terminal 4-year-old girl. Yippee.
Yeah, you didn't put a title on that one, so I read through it and I had to like, oh, well, shit. Yeah. So I read through this and I'm just like, okay, so they come to the U.S., presumably during the Biden presidency, because they successfully got a humanitarian parole like permission to come into the country, which is now being revoked under quote new DHS guidelines, which is fucking bullshit. and like this little girl who has like a massively terrible medical condition. She had been treated in Mexico for a couple of years, but she wasn't really getting better. Then they get permission to come into the U.S. She starts getting medical treatment here. She actually is improving, but still needs medical treatment, right? Because, you know, she's getting better over time.
Right.
And you know, but like still in the middle of that. And now they're removing her permission to be here for the very reason that she's wanting to be here, which is the medical treatment. And I'm just like, I don't care how much you hate, you hate illegal immigration or whatever. She was here completely legally, and it is only through this bullshit that she is being removed for no good reason other than we don't want to, I don't know, help people anymore.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying that as if it's a surprising reason
I suppose.
to kick people out, because, you know, that's just their whole thing at this point.
Yeah.
But, you know, you're literally condemning this girl to death because that's what's going to happen, right? It's so ridiculous. And then I guess there's some shit about there was some shit attached about a protest outside of a courthouse in San Antonio, Texas, related to this, and they were zip tying migrant children outside the courthouse. Witnesses are saying that kids as young as 9 are being, well, it says visibly distressed. I don't know if they were actually the ones being zip tied, but still, holy fuck.
It's pretty brutal. Like,
Jesus.
Pretty wild stuff. Like the actual, like, to be an SS officer is like a whole nother level of like cruelty. Like, doesn't that seem like fucking super fucked up?
This is just so fucked. And oh, that's right. I was reading this earlier. So she suffers from short bowel syndrome, meaning she needs specialized care, including IV treatments for 14 hours a day. Right? That's more than half the day. She has to be hooked up to an IV for these treatments. And she is getting better, but she has to be fed both intravenously and through a feeding tube.
Right. Wow.
And like, if she stops this treatment, her doctors literally say she will die within days. That's how bad this is.
Yeah.
She will die within days.
Yeah, it's like they just sentence her to death, then that's it.
Yeah. And like, they had been granted a temporary status based on humanitarian grounds, citing her dire need for care. But the government has just decided to revoke that status, meaning whether, like, I don't know if they're going to deport her just out of the country and back to Mexico, where she was at least getting treatment, if not, treatment that was helping her get better. She was at least staying alive, but maybe they'll stick her on a plane back to, I can't actually tell where they originated from. Okay, it says if forced to return to Mexico. So it looks like they are Mexican in nature. So it's not one of these cases where like they got to Mexico and then got stopped at the border. And,
right.
Yeah, so it's sometimes difficult to tell, what the actual country of origin is. But yeah, okay, fighting deportation from U.S. to Mexico. So like if she goes back to Mexico, there's at least a chance that she'll be able to get treatment that will keep her alive, if not, improve her situation. But like, we have these humanitarian exceptions for a fucking reason, and now we're just taking them away because fuck them, I guess. If we're trying to be America number one and America first in cruelty, that's certainly a target that we seem to be getting towards. So I guess if that's what they're going for, sure. Let's go USA, right?
Yeah. And so today I just added some more to this story because it's related, I guess. In Gary Andasagany introduced Bill C2 in the Canadian legislature today, or Canadian Parliament, and it's supposed to, strengthen borders and do all the things to stop fentanyl trafficking and blah 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 nonsense stuff that that Trump said that isn't real, that we are now placating in order to keep trade, I guess, going is kind of the idea.
I guess.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
And then,
I'm just looking, or I'm looking at, let's see here. Member of the Liberal Party, House of Commons.
Yeah.
Okay. He was previously the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs, Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada, and just recently, I guess, got placed as Minister of Public Safety.
That's the new cabinet.
He's been moved around quite a bit. Like seriously, he was doing Indigenous Relations and Attorney General both. Between March 14 and May 13. He lasted 2 months as the Attorney General of Canada. Okay, sure. That makes sense, I guess. That's
it's possible that was a
temporary...
Confusing. Yeah, it's possible it was just a temporary position at the time while they were getting somebody else ready for it or something. But
yeah, that's fair. I forget that, around here, switching at an AG, well, okay, I was about to say switching at an AG usually doesn't happen that fast, but then I remember Trump's first term in office, so never mind. Christ almighty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I would love to know what the fuck a Minister of Public Safety is, because, like, to me, that and the Attorney General in the U.S., I feel like would be roughly the same thing. I have no idea what that position actually does.
It's got to be like, what's that term? Like, it's like a term that means something else, but it's not really. It's like he's a cop, but but we call him a
Okay, no, it's equivalent to the Solicitor General of the U.S., who is that's the office that argues on behalf of the government in, like, lawsuits against the government. So, like, the Attorney General manages the Department of Justice and deals with prosecutions of, like, criminal shit, but then you have the Solicitor General who will deal with all of the lawsuits against the government as the defendant. So that's what it is in the U.S. Whether or not that's the same thing in Canada, I have no idea. But anyways,
yeah.
So that's delightful, and, like, I'm reading through the details of the bill here, right? And it's responding to concerns, and I'm going to put that in giant air quotes, raised by U.S. President Donald Trump about cross-border fentanyl and migration. The two things that we have statistics saying Canada's not really a major source of that shit. Yeah. Most of the fentanyl is coming in from overseas, and I mean literally seas and airplanes, not across land borders. And the migrations, again, mostly coming through, air travel, far more so than across land borders.
Yeah.
So it's wild that, like, they are not only doing shit to appease the orange fascist, they are doing shit to appease the lies of the orange fascist. I mean, they're introducing legislation based on lies that the president has thrown out there, which from the U.S. legislature, I would expect. From the Canadian legislature, I fucking thought you guys had a little more integrity than that. I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, that's what happened.
My bad for being a hopeless fucking optimist in the world, because, they say, be a pessimist and you'll never be let down. For some reason, I can't do that. And I just end up constantly being let down. And it is what it is. But
yeah, it's unfortunate that Canada is actually like a lapdog for the United States. So whoever happens to be in charge, even if they're a megalomaniac, a fascist, a complete liar, and we'll still cater to them at every whim.
And I'm just waiting for the comments saying, yeah, but Polyev and the conservatives would have been worse. I'm like, so the fuck what? Doesn't mean we can't still criticize the bullshit liberals do. Don't give me that shit.
That's right.
Yeah, we're prohibits cash payments exceeding $10,000. I'm guessing that's Canadian dollars.
Yes.
Does that mean cash payments exceeding 10? Prohibits in what sense? Cross-border cash? I don't even understand.
Yeah, that would be. I kind of assume that would be to you can't send that much money out of the country to someone else.
Sure. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Everything is awful. Everything is burning, and I thought I had a rhyme for that, but.
But
I am
of burning,
too exhausted to come up with comedic parody songs for the bullshit that we are currently living through.
Fair enough. But, like I say, speaking of burning, there are a lot of wildfires going through northern Canada. So massive wildfires are sweeping through northern Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Manitoba, forcing the evacuation of over 25,000 people and revealing the ongoing toll of climate collapse. In Manitoba, roughly 17,000 residents have been displaced, many from Flin Flon, which has seen some of the worst damage, and Saskatchewan has reported 219 fires this year, well above the 5-year average of 131.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I had to look this up because I am shocked I didn't notice this in my read-through. Flin Flon? That's the real name of a real city in Canada?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, we have Walla Walla, Washington, which sounds Flin Flon.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good.
Okay. It was literally named after a fictional character in a novel. Okay, so this ridiculous nonsense was done intentionally.
Somebody did it on
purpose. At least. Nothing like an absurd fucking town name to bring in some levity. I'm so sorry that they are literally burning, but I had to stop and Flin Flon. Okay, all right, it's out of my system.
It's funny because I barely notice it now. I've heard the name Flin Flon my whole life, so I don't even think about it. But yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah.
The largest, which is called the Shoe Fire, which is related to the Shoe and Horse Mountain.
And of course, Flin Flon is literally 2 letters away from flip flop, which is a kind of shoe, sort of. And it's called the Shoe Fire. God damn it. The jokes write themselves about a horrible tragedy that I should not be laughing at. God damn it. Oh, I hate myself.
If you can't laugh, you'll get depressed. That's the thing.
It's true. It's the only thing I have left. Don't take this away from me.
So the Shoe Fire, unfortunately, has scorched about over 300,000 hectares, which we have in our notes here. That is
larger than the land area of Rhode Island.
Yeah, it's 3,000 square kilometers or 1,160 square miles. So quite large.
Just imagine the entire state of Rhode Island on fire, and then some. And trust me, there are plenty of trees in Massachusetts and Connecticut to to have that happen, and that's happening in Canada. So yeah, Canada's burning, which
according to
as if everything burning wasn't bad enough in a metaphorical sense, we have the climate crashing down around us, causing gigantic wildfires, which is hilarious because here in Massachusetts, the the weather has actually been incredibly mild for June.
Oh, is that
So,
right?
I was over here thinking, oh, wow, the weather's been so nice and like mild and not too hot. And of course, a few thousand miles away from me, everything is burning. I shouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah, and of course, the Premier of Saskatchewan, Scott Moe, he claimed that 90% of the wildfires in Saskatchewan are human-caused, uh,
Of course they are.
which is on some level correct because some of the causes were unattended campfires, discarded cigarettes, and unauthorized ATV use. So
Damn,
there,
that unauthorized ATV use.
yeah, yeah,
As if
ATV
there was
use
authorized ATV use, which I'm pretty sure there isn't, because, it's banned.
yeah, it's currently banned across northern Saskatchewan for sure. It's kind of there was so I'm in the Saskatchewan subreddit on Reddit, and I don't often go there, but I was in there this week, and there was discussion about someone dumping gasoline into the ditch and setting it on fire as one of the causes of the fires. And this is
Damn it.
pure rumor. This is not a real. Nobody knows for sure
Okay.
that this happened.
All right.
It's just one of those things that people say in a subreddit and it gets spread around. So it's important to mention we don't have any evidence of that.
All right. Well, that's good at least.
Southern Chiefs Organization deployed its mobile crisis response team and launched donation drives to support the 17,000 evacuees in Manitoba. Peter Ballantyne, Cree Nation, declared a state of emergency and warned that communities like Pelican Narrows and Deschambault Lake were running low on supplies. Indigenous fire crews are calling for the creation of a national Indigenous fire suppression team to improve mutual aid and emergency response capacity. Indigenous leaders are demanding more firefighters, better air support, and coordinated response from all levels of government. And First Nations emphasize the importance of respecting their right to lead emergency management in their own territories.
I would also like to point out this is what happens when you don't let Indigenous people do controlled burns.
Yeah, exactly. They've had good effective practices for a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because they realized long before us assholes got here that occasionally burning, doing controlled burns on all of the underbrush can help larger fire or can help prevent larger fires in the future. Because they knew that shit, and then we came in and said, "No, you can't do that. It's too dangerous." Not
Right.
realizing that they've been living here for thousands of years and have figured out ways to do this safely and effectively, and we're fucking dumbasses. But who needs millennia of experience when you're a person with the unearned confidence of a straight white man?
Yeah, that's right. Kai Matara said, the Parliament Haka, which we talked about last time. Did you know that the person they were fighting against was David Seymour? He worked in Saskatchewan for the think tank Frontier Center for Public Policy. I did not know that. And just like he's doing with us Maori, he screwed over Native Canadians there by supporting Paul Bunner's racism and genocide denial of Native Canadians in residential schools. Yeah, no, that I did not know that was the same person, but it does not actually surprise me. These guys are often granted, like you say, like in various regions, power that they don't really deserve because they just happen to be, they know somebody or they got the right degree or whatever.
It's not about what you know; it's about who you know.
Yeah,
sad as it is.
So our fifth story isn't really like a current events news story, but it's an article I read that talks about why Canada should apply labor protections to the rental housing sector. And it's an article from The Conversation written by Elliot Ugalde. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But they argue that Canada's rental housing system leaves tenants vulnerable in ways that would never be tolerated in the workplace, at least in Canada. I'm sure. I think there's United States probably has fewer protections.
Yeah.
But labor laws protect workers by acknowledging the power imbalance between employers and employees, setting the standards for wages and hours and conditions. But tenants have no such protections. You can create a union, a tenants union, but the landlord has no obligation to negotiate with you.
Yeah, I mean, that's true here as well. But the lovely thing about a tenants union, when you have a sufficient number of people is if you all threaten to withhold rent, it's kind of difficult for them to come in and evict all of you. And so that can be a pretty significant way to pressure them. And that's the thing
Yep.
about unions. As long as they're not like expressly, forbidden or suppressed by the government, usually the fact that either landlords or employers are under no obligation to negotiate with them isn't an issue, because the whole point of a union is to collect, to have that collective power to be able to fight back on, the employer or the landlord's terms, and, those being either revenue or, well, revenue, because rent. So yeah, if you threaten their money supply, usually they will do one of two things. They will either try to talk, or they will try to use the law to either make you pay or force you out. And usually that's a lot harder to do when you have a much larger group, collectively fighting, because, no one wants to send in, multiple SWAT teams to forcibly evict, 20 plus tenants from a building.
Right.
So yeah, it's
Yeah,
there have
it's
been
like you say.
multiple, and there have been multiple cases where like sheriffs in the U.S., coming to try and evict someone, when and there are 100 people on their lawn, peaceably preventing the sheriff from coming in. They don't want to deal with that shit. So
Yep. Yeah,
this
for
is
sure.
why solidarity is so effective when you can organize it. So yeah, power to those tenants unions. Get what you can. But I definitely I think the government in its alleged role to be protecting the welfare of the people should probably be doing something to put protections in place for tenants. And if they can't or won't, then it's gonna have to be up to us to protect ourselves, which it usually is.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like I keep referring to other podcasts, but Blueprints of Disruption just did a really good one on tenant union organizing. They've got a few episodes on tenant organizing in Ontario as well. So always make sure to kick that or check that stuff out.
Indeed.
Kai Matera also said that David Seymour was also a contributor to Brexit Central. He's ruined people's lives all over the world.
Oh, lovely.
Fantastic.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
This is pretty common. You get a scumbag in one country, he's probably been a scumbag in multiple countries, because that's how global commerce works.
That's right. And then Kai Matara also said the Maori tribe of Tuho, when fighting to get their land back, which they eventually won, the Uruwera is autonomous now, sent eviction notices to landlords to kick them out. Well, that's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, for sure.
Love that.
Okay. On to the lightning round, which is maybe not going to be so quick because these are a couple interesting stories to me. So the first one is an article I got from anarchistfederation.net from, damn it, I can't find the guy's name right now, or the person's name right now. I'm not even sure if it was a man or non-binary or a woman. So this article, it does look at Burkina Faso, where military officer Ibrahim Traore seized power in 2022, presenting himself as a revolutionary leader in the tradition of Thomas Sankara. And the author, here it is, Leroy Messiri, argues that while the language of liberation is being used, the reality looks more like another case of centralized authoritarian rule. And he uses this article to explore the broader problem of post-colonial African politics, where top-down movements often repeat the same power structures they claim to fight.
Yep.
So, it's
I mean, this is unfortunately common, and Thomas Sankara is one of the exceptions to the pretty standard pattern of authoritarian, revolutionaries, quickly becoming corrupt after they, successfully run their revolution.
Yeah.
He seemed to actually walk the walk as well as talking the talk. But unfortunately, most people who use that kind of language don't end up doing so, and that's why you really have to pay more attention to what they do than to what they say.
Yeah. And
Because
some of the
it's
stuff,
pretty easy to
yeah,
it's pretty easy to see if you're paying attention what these folks are actually doing in what they say, and they will give lots of excuses for things, but don't buy the excuses as good as they sound. Because they'll usually invoke some sort of we have to keep the capitalists from reasserting their power, so we have to take that power for ourselves,
right.
and then we have to centralize it so it's effectively controlled so they can't infiltrate us. And I'm like, no, if you're if you're actually committed to revolutionary ideas, it means you have to start stepping away from the control mechanisms that capital uses, and that really should be something that you're working on before that revolution ever starts. And so
Yeah.
if they're centralizing control under a revolutionary guise, that is not a revolutionary movement. It's literally just a few people trying to take power from a few other people, and it's a lot more of the same. So this is
Yeah.
unfortunate, but it happens all over the place.
Yeah.
Um, there are various people, various anarchists on YouTube who talk about the unity of ends and means, and I think that
Yes.
is a really important concept to keep in mind whenever you're looking at these so-called revolutions, and how they are taking power from the ruling classes wherever they happen to be, and whether or not it's just going from one ruling class to another.
Yeah. I think I probably mentioned the unity of ends and means way more than people want to hear it, but it's very important.
Yeah, if we can take one lesson from the many revolutionary movements we've seen over the past century,
Yeah.
I think it's unity of ends and means being the biggest one, because when they don't get crushed from the outside, they ultimately get usurped from the inside by power hungry maniacs who
Yeah.
completely undo any of the positive changes that the revolutionary fervor might have brought about.
Okay, so moving on. This one I enjoyed as well. Cannes Film Festival power outage might have been caused by anarchist groups. So on May 24th, anarchists reportedly sabotaged a major electrical substation near Cannes, plunging the area, including parts of the prestigious film festival, into darkness. A communique claimed responsibility, stating the action was aimed at disrupting capitalist, militarist, and ecologically destructive institutions. Over 160,000 homes were affected, and while French authorities scramble for answers, the act sent a message: the elite celebration of wealth and glamour won't be insulated from resistance. And yeah,
Yeah, I heard about this. I think actually, yeah, it was yesterday. Um, the one issue I have with this is that the way they went about it is a problem for me from a strategic point of view, because what ultimately ended up happening is that the things the organization and the entities they were targeting
mhm,
all likely had ways to get back up and running within a few hours, as we saw with the Cannes Film Festival. They, the claim
yeah,
also mentioned targeting a large number of industrial, buildings in the
yes,
region, but these will all have had backup generators
yeah,
and other
that's right.
ways to restore power quickly after a power loss, because they focus on things like redundancy and reliability. I know because I work for a company I work for a company that runs a factory that focuses on redundancy and reliability. They
Right.
predict this kind of shit ahead of time because it fucks up their bottom line when things like this happen.
Yeah.
And the other impact this had was that something like 160,000 homes went
Yeah.
without power.
Lost power. That's right.
Yeah, and so ultimately, this is an action that didn't really end up hurting the people they were trying to hurt, and
Right.
did end up hurting the regular working class folks in the area because, people have come to rely on power for a lot of things. And like, if there was messaging or work ahead of time to tell people that power might be going out, or on the ground organizing to help people out when the power went out, that might be something.
Right.
But sabotage for sabotage's sake, when it doesn't actually end up significantly impacting the targets and only really does significant collateral damage, that doesn't make sense to me as an anarchist, because, like,
That's fair.
what are you actually doing here? Sure, okay, you're getting a message out. You're making yourself visible. Fine. But is that happening at the expense of the people that you are trying to improve matters for in the long run? Because you don't necessarily know if there were people at home, in hospice care the right thing, where you're at home, and like people who are at home relying on medical devices that require electricity to keep them alive while they are undergoing treatment for something. There very well may have been people who died as a result of this who were not at all who you were targeting.
Yeah.
So, like, if you're gonna do shit like that, make sure to think about the community first, because ultimately that is who we are trying to help, is the communities of people that are being oppressed by the large corporations and the wealthy individuals who are doing shit, or who are attending things like the film festival, and who are running these major industrial factories that are powering various either pollutant or militaristic or both.
Yeah, both.
Yeah,
I think
it's just not like, this is not a good way to go about it. Which is not to say that, like, I necessarily condemn them for what they did, but I do think that there were better ways to achieve the ends that you were trying to achieve without the collateral damage. And I think that ultimately it should be more about building up the communities to be more self-sufficient, and to be more, to not be as reliant on things like the power grid before you start attacking it. Building the we were just talking about prefiguration, building the future in the present, build up the communities first, then you can start going after the shit that, because you have reduced or eliminated the dependence of regular people on those systems.
Yeah, that's one of the things you see a lot is like, so in this case, you see this is a case of sabotage, but there's a lot of groups generally that are doing, they're not doing sabotage. They're doing like the mutual aid, community building, community gardens, stuff like that. And that work probably needs to precede maybe acts of sabotage like that. But
yeah,
but
and like there are definitely ways to do sabotage that don't have these effects. Like, when we're looking at like pipelines being built, sabotaging those, or when like Cop City in Atlanta finding ways to sabotage that, or sabotaging machinery that's destroying indigenous lands, shit like that. Like, there are all of these different ways to successfully do sabotage that don't have that kind of collateral damage. And
that's fair.
I'm all for that. It's when you start hurting regular people without actually creating a significant impact on your targets, that I'm just like,
Yeah.
the cost
It,
benefit doesn't really seem to work out for me. And, say what you will about me using the language of cost benefit, it's still a thing you got to keep in mind.
yeah. It's whatever your language, you got to do your pros and cons list, right?
Yeah. You need to understand the impacts that your actions will have. Before you actually take those actions, that should be part of the planning process. And if you're not taking into account the harm that you will cause to people who are not your targets, that's a big thing you got to take into account, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're hurting yourself and you're hurting others more than you're helping anyone.
Yeah. And I guess I should say, in the article that I read here from Vanity Fair, there was no talk of anybody who was actually who actually died or was injured or hurt from these blackouts. So
Okay.
I guess in that vein, at least there wasn't any like actual like death caused by it.
Yeah.
And like you said, despite the disruption, Cowans managed to restore power via backup systems and carried on with their closing ceremonies. So,
and Chancellor, all of the factories and industrial projects they were targeting in this also were up within a matter of minutes or hours.
Because they have the money to do that. They can build in those redundancies. So, yeah. All right. So moving on, our last segment of the week is capitalism's most deranged moment of the week, which...
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing this, because one thing you didn't include in these notes, at least I didn't see that you did, so was the Trump post about it. But I'll let you go through the details.
Sure. So in early June, which I guess we're only 3 days in, so the article came out yesterday. Walmart increased prices on essential items by as much as 38%, sparking widespread criticism. Shoppers shared receipts showing sharp jumps on groceries and household goods, and outrage grew as Walmart reported record quarterly profits, leading to renewed scrutiny over corporate pricing practices during an economic strain. Price hikes of 20 to 38% on basic goods like food, toiletries, and cleaning products. I saw some pictures of prices for toys that went up 3 times, started at $20.99 and ended up at like $60. Like, that's not a 38% increase at that point. That's like 3 times the price of what it started at.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah, and of course, there's economists and watchdog groups flagged the company for potential greedflation, which is, just an excuse to be like, yeah, well, our economic system isn't to blame. It's the company that's to blame.
Yeah, I'm just like, sure, greedflation probably is a big part of it, because a company will take any excuse they can to hike up prices and increase their profit margins. The thing is, like, this was always going to happen. Like, as long as those tariffs happen, this was going to happen, because it's just a lovely excuse for companies to raise prices on consumers and not get a huge blowback, because, they can just point to, oh, well, this is a thing the government did.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
What I found most fucking ridiculous about this whole thing is that a couple of weeks ago, because, like, I think these announcements came back in mid-May, when I think the first I actually heard about this was hearing about Trump's post on Lie Social that where he was lambasting Walmart for raising their prices, saying they should eat the cost of the tariffs. I'm just like, my dude,
that's never gonna happen.
That was never going to happen. Are you insane? Do you actually think? No, and like, obviously this was a way to shed the blame off him for imposing the tariffs in the first place, because he's like, well, the company should just eat the tariffs. I'm like, what? That's not how anything works. I'm like, did you honestly think companies were just going to eat the tariffs? That's not how fucking anything works. And I'm just like, how you are supposedly a businessman. This is the most basic shit you could imagine.
This is one of those examples of things that I say a lot is that, so right-wingers understand finance, left-wingers understand economics.
You're not wrong.
This was never going, like, it would never happen that companies are going to eat the fucking
Yeah.
costs under capital.
You could talk to the farthest right-wing conservative economist, and they would have told you, yeah, this is going to lead to price increases.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll justify it 20 ways from Sunday, but they will admit to you, yes, this is going, like, Javier Milei couldn't say with a straight face, this isn't going to increase prices.
Right. Yeah, that's
Fucking
right.
hell.
Absolutely ridiculous. And at the time of reporting, the company has not issued any statement directly addressing the price hike controversy.
Of course they haven't.
Why would
Because
they?
as you note here, their stock prices went up.
Yeah, so
because
why would they ever?
The other thing people seem to forget a lot is that a company's first duty is to its stockholders. Yeah. That is like legal. They are legally obligated to take actions that they believe will create the dividends and the returns for their stockholders, for their shareholders, regardless of whatever else there is. There's literally a legal obligation to do this. Now, sure, there are other legal obligations they have that say, you can't pollute, you can't, or you have to have, safe food and all this shit. But ultimately, their first loyalty is to shareholders. Yeah. And if they can increase profits, then that's all the shareholders give a shit about. Because the other thing is Walmart is the place, other than like Amazon, that has disrupted the markets all over the country, has become, the main place where so many people get their everyday goods. There really generally isn't a cheaper place around. And so when Walmart raises their prices, that's the final, that was the place the buck stopped as far as, low prices go. So,
it makes me, a little while ago, I had a conversation with Jessa McLean, host of Blueprints of Disruption, and we talked briefly about OPEC increasing the production of oil by 411,000 barrels per day. And I said that the price is going to come down. That's going to affect the economy in Saskatchewan and Alberta. It's going to cost people jobs. And someone came on my TikTok, I think was, saying like, well, why would it cost people jobs? Why don't the companies just eat the cost? And this is exactly the same thing. It's like they never will eat the cost. They absolutely will always pass that on to someone else, or they'll do layoffs, or, companies don't let profits go down. That's not how any of this works.
Why in the world would you think that a company would willingly eat the cost of a price increase on their end rather than passing it on to the consumer? You think they actually care about consumers?
Right. What world do you live in?
I'm just like, okay. I don't know how you got that naive, but congratulations, I guess. You have managed to avoid basic reality for your entire life up to this point.
Yeah. You've successfully commented on the internet.
Yeah, you successfully said something stupid on the internet. Congrats.
Good job. So that's, I guess, officially our last story for the evening.
Yeah. Oh my lord! Like the level of absolute ridiculousness they try to push here is. I don't understand how this stuff can successfully make it through a rational, logical brain. And then I remember, oh, that's right. There are brains that are neither of those things.
Yep.
And then I have to despair because here I thought, I can't even, just the words have escaped me. I'm done.
When the internet was invented, we thought that it would help people get educated and access information in a reasonable way. But
Yeah, we forgot that not all information is equal, and
alas, yeah.
yeah, we need to like go back in time and be like, look, we did the internet thing. Here's all of the psychological science that came out of the existence of the internet. Can we maybe rethink how we build this?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. It needs to be started over. So somebody has to make a
Yeah,
time travel machine.
yeah, yeah. The internet needs to start over again from scratch.
That's right. All right. So I've got a few mutual aid shout outs.
Yep.
For the end of the episode, Indigenous Climate Action, supporting frontline resistance and sovereignty in the face of wildfire displacement, is indigenousclimateaction.com. We've got Health Workers Alliance for Palestine, providing direct support to medics and aid workers in Gaza, which is healthworkersforpalestine.org. There's in South Texas, the South Texas Human Rights Center, aiding migrants affected by border militarization and brutal policy changes, at southtexashumanrights.org. And we've got the Hamilton Encampment Support Network, supporting unhoused people and resisting evictions in Ontario. That's HESN.ca. And lastly, we've got the Toronto Prisoners' Rights Project, supporting incarcerated and criminalized people through mutual aid and abolitionist organizing. And they have a patreon.com/Toronto Prisoners' Rights. Yeah. So,
Amazing. All of
yeah.
those sound fantastic.
Those will be in the show notes for anybody who wants to support those organizations. And obviously, if you like what we're doing, share the show, leave a rating, a thumbs up, and all that stuff. And if you have already given to all the much more worthy projects, you can also support us on Patreon, which will also be in the show notes. So
awesome. Well, thank you very much for inviting me, and have a good one.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody in the comments, and thank you for those viewing.
Indeed. Have a good one all.